Playing catch-up in the game of life. American millennials are approaching middle age in worse financial shape than every living generation ahead of them, lagging behind baby boomers and Generation X despite a decade of economic growth and falling unemployment. Hobbled by the financial crisis and recession that struck as they began their working life, Americans born between 1981 and 1996 have failed to match every other generation of young adults born since the Great Depression. They have less wealth, even with record levels of education. The troubles of millennials have delayed traditional adult milestones in ways expected to alter the nation's demographic and economic contours through the end of the century. Millennials helped drive the number of U.S. births to their lowest levels in 32 years. That means fewer. Social Security last month estimated that in 2035, after nearly all baby boomers retire, there will be 2.2 workers per beneficiary. Last year, prospects for a quick turnaround aren't good. Men and women in their will have to rethink a lot of things about taxation and how social programs are funded if fertility is really on a more permanent decline, said Ankai Chen, Assistant Director of Savings Research at the Center for Retirement Research at Boston College. Growth in property values and the stock market this past decade helped older households regain ground since the recession. Millennials: if I can't afford a home, I definitely can't afford kids, said Joy Brown, 32 years old. She is a renter. Myself and a lot of my peers still feel like we're playing catch-up in the game of life, said Ms. Brown, a compliance officer for the city of Chicago. More than half the 72 million American millennials are now in their 30s. The oldest will turn. Their slow start has been well documented in the first years after the recession. New data show that their economic fundamentals are fundamentally different, said Christopher Kurz, an economist at the Federal Reserve. Mr. Kurz and his colleagues last year analyzed income, debt, asset, and consumption data to figure out how millennials compared at similar ages with Generation X, people born between 1965 and 1980, as well as baby boomers, those born from 1946 to 1964. They found that millennial households had an average net worth of about $92,000 in 2016, nearly 40% less than General X households in 2001, adjusted for inflation, and about 20% less than baby boomer households in 1989. Wages didn't look much better. At the same ages, among women, incomes were 12% higher for General Zers and 24% higher for baby boomers than for millennials, using the same measures. One explanation for their slow progress is bad luck. Economists have. Till von Lachter, an economics professor at the University of California, Los Angeles, found that Americans who entered the labor market when unemployment rates rose by 5 points, so about the same as in the 2007-09 recession, saw their cumulative earnings fall by 10% over the first decade of a career. The effects have health and lifestyle consequences well into middle age, said Professor von Lachter. He reviewed the disappearance of manufacturing jobs, which in post-war years paid middle-class wages to high school graduates, is another misfortune. Those who lack a median household income last year was about $105,300 for millennials with a bachelor's degree or higher, more than twice that of households headed by high school graduates, according to the Pew Research Center. Many millennials couldn't afford to buy houses or invest in the stock market early enough to profit from the sharp escalation of prices over the past decade, said William Emmons, an economist at the Center for Household Financial Stability at the Federal Reserve Bank of St. Louis. About one-third of millennials owned homes in 2016, compared with half of General Zers at similar ages in 2001, and just under half of baby boomers in 1989, according to Mr. Kurz's findings. Even if millennials, losing out on a decade of gains in the stock and housing markets, hurt the financial standing of millennial households. Between 2000, this St. Louis Fed found. The regional Fed Bank concluded that people born in the 1980s are at risk of becoming America's lost generation. Mr. Emmons said, men and women who feel an almost insurmountable burden to catch up financially. Millennials, as a group, are better educated than any generation before them. About 4 in 10, those college diplomas have come at a high price. The average student, for the Cochrans, the price was personal. Joseph Cochran, they ditched their wedding plans but forged a life together. Each wear wedding ring. If we had 0 student loans we'd be married, Ms. Cochran said. We have to be far. Their strategy included moving from Philadelphia to Maryland 4 years ago. Ms. Cochran also has a 17-year-old daughter from a previous relationship and has promised to pay for college as long as the teenager studies at an in-state school. Last fall, her teenager likes the idea of being able to graduate without having any student loans, Ms. Cochran said. The family takes a more practical view of higher education, based, in part, on hard-won experience with jobs and school loans. We tell her to think. The financial strain faced by many American millennials is driving shifts in their political views, reflecting a feeling that as a citizen the system is not really operating as you expect it to, said Mohammed Yunus, editor-in-chief of Gallup. A Gallup poll last summer found that millennials were the only generation that favored socialism over capitalism by a slight margin. The survey didn't think tough times for millennials struggling to reach a more comfortable middle-class life have triggered support for populist candidates and promises of universal health care and free college education. Tony Mansilla, a 31-year-old hospital maintenance technician in American Falls, Idaho, voted for Hillary Clinton, a Democrat, in 2016. Now, he is Mr. Mansilla, who earns about $35,000 a year, said he can't afford the more than $600 a month it costs to insure his wife and 2 children on his employer plan. His children rely. These health care worries pointed Mr. Mansilla to Mr. Sanders's Democratic Party primary campaign and his way of looking at health care, trying to get that for everybody, taxing the rich, he said. He might have the best. As millennials approach middle age, more are asking for help from their employers. Ford Motor Code, a good number of them are in their 30s and are thinking about longer-term planning, said Julie Lodge Jarrett, Chief Talent Officer at the Dearborn, Michigan, automaker. While they want to say, Zillow Group Incorporated, the Seattle real estate company, earlier this year began offering a student loan repayment program, contributing $25 a month toward the employee's balance. The benefit was in it. About 580 workers have signed up, the company said, and they carry an average loan balance of about $28,000. Mike Morgan, head of Global Insights at Qualtrics in Provo, Utah, which researches millennials, said the financial picture of the generation is rosier than it appears. Millennials are much scrappier than we give them credit for. Employers have told Mr. Morgan that the desire of millennials for on-the-job feedback shows they are eager to improve their skills. One other bright spot: millennials are entering their prime earning years just as baby boomers retire. That should fuel Write to Janet Adamy at janetadamy@wsj.com.
Raindrop, drop top, top smoking, no cooking the hot pot. Cracking, fucking on your bitch, yeah, that. Looking up, open the park,